Well, welcome to the 2010 GM's Jam. This is the second year we've been doing the GM's Jam, and we're all very excited about it because I think certainly it's one of my favorite events at Gen Con, because as a game master, I'm always wanting to better my gaming, better my relations with my group, and have more fun. And last year, we came here and we did the GM's Jam, and we got so much great feedback in a wonderful give and take session, and we decided we definitely needed to do it again. And just to set the ground rules for this, it's very much give and take. The only reason we're up here is to sort of get things going.
Because hell, my opinion's not as valid as anybody else's.
Everyone's got a valid opinion. All of us, I assume, are game masters or want to be game masters or dungeon masters or referees or whatever we'd like to call it, depending on our system. But real quick, we'll go down the line and introduce ourselves. And please, while we're discussing, if we want to just throw out some topics for starters, once we get started, just remember, raise your hand. We'll try and keep everything manageable, and we'll try and get through as many topics as we can in 90 minutes. So. Thanks for coming in advance, real quick, for those of you who start to fall asleep when I talk and sneak out the back. So,
that's okay. They'll sneak out in front of you.
So, Phil, do you want to start with?
Why don't we start with Phil?
Hi, I'm Phil Vecchione, known as DNA Phil. I'm one of the writers for Gnome Stew, and game master for 25 years, something like that.
He won an Emmy last night.
I did. We did.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
Throw that out there for you.
All right.
Wait, I'm going to shamelessly plug my new book.
New book?
Yes, so we have a book, at Studio 2 Publishing called Eureka, 501 Plots to Inspire Game Masters. So check it out.
Where can we find this?
It's funny you should ask.
Wow.
I have some cards.
Like an infomercial.
Booth 320.
What is it, distributors and stores?
Thank you.
In the fall and in the winter. It'll be in the catalog for Studio 2. All right, well, that's enough shameless promotion. Thank you.
Oh, there's always room for shameless promotion. That's what we're all about, right? All right. My name is Jeff. I run the Bone Squirrel blog, and my personal favorite is, of course, I do the RPG Circus podcast with Zach and Mark whenever he shows up. So that's the two great things that I do. Game Master wise, I don't know. I think I've been doing it since I was 12, I think, at some level. Because God knows, I think I was the Game Master when the only thing any of us had was, I think, B1. Someone had the module for B1, and that was it. So we were just sitting there, okay, how do we make characters? I don't know. I'll make up some rules for it. And we went from there. So that's, let's see, 12. Okay, that's 20, 30, something like that. I have no idea. I don't lose. I've lost track.
A while, right?
Yeah, a while.
Cool. Well, my name's Zach Houghton. I run RPGblog2.com. I'm also a co-host with Jeff on RPG Circus podcast. I started in the hobby with the Rules Cyclopedia D&D and Palladium Fantasy and Rifts, where my first character was killed by an asteroid in the first 5 minutes. About that time, I realized I'd probably be a better GM than player because I didn't have patience for that sort of crap. So very quickly, I've played a lot of systems, Rollmaster, a number of indie games as well, so I kind of have an eclectic taste when it comes to gaming. So.
I'm Josh Dolcher, also known as Dante on StupidRanger.com. I started playing these type of games almost 20 years ago by a very strange way compared to most of the other guys, through a board game called Hero Quest. I don't know if anyone remembers that. Way back in the day. I failed miserably, took a very long break because none of my friends thought that type of thing was cool. And then, luckily enough, in college, I found a group of really hardcore D&D role-playing type of gamers and picked up there. That was over 10 years ago now. So, and been running games since, and really do love it. So, mostly D&D for me.
Quick question: how hardcore?
Huh?
How hardcore was hardcore?
We had at least 2 games that ran each week. And
I only ask because I know some people that will do. Oh, we have to play 20 hours a week.
No. We did run the gamut of systems. We went from D&D to like Deadlands, which I believe was Savage Worlds at that point.
Or you mean D20 or whatever the hell they had?
Whatever, it was the proto Savage Worlds, but yeah, so we ran the gamut, tried a lot of different games, but almost always would gravitate back toward D&D. So that's enough about me.
Great. Okay, well,
And Mark just texted me and said he'll be here in 5, so any minute now.
or 5.
Or fine.
Well, he has to find the ballroom first.
Very good. Well, let's open it for topics because I think as game masters we have a lot of the same common issues that we have to deal with on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis. And I think we all deal with those in different ways and might have some things to kind of teach each other about that. So who's got a problem either in their gaming group or part of their gaming group or about their gaming group that they'd like to throw out there to start us off? Ooh, first hand.
I actually have a lot of I have a lot of players that are interested in when I run games, but I can't really handle 9 or 10 people, but I don't want to try and just invite, only 4 or 5 inexplicable people. So what's a good way to handle that without making people feel like they're slighted or excluded or whatever?
Sure, that's great.
Social issues are-
Well, first off, it's great that you have that many people who want to play. Most
Yes,
of us
that would
would.
be opposite.
Most of us are extremely jealous of you right now because it's like, come on, guys, we have 2, we need 3. Can I get 3? And one's the weird guy who lives down the road and mows his lawn at 3 in the morning and
Wears his
doesn't
tinfoil hat.
wears his tinfoil hat. So it's like, okay, well, he can play, but he's not running. One of the things, are all your players pretty good on attendance? Is this 9
Yes.
to 10 people where you want them every time?
Normally I would take like 7 or 8 people because there's a couple people missing every session, but with these people, they make almost every session. So it's not.
Well, almost every session. I was going to say one of the things you might want to look at.
Where do you live?
Rochester, New York.
Wow, Rochester, the gaming mecca, I guess. That's awesome. First, we'll feel
Actually, that's not a bad suggestion. If you know anyone else that has some groups in it, maybe you can.
9 to 10, you split into 2 groups.
That's a great idea. You have a unique opportunity to be able to run 2 groups, possibly one group that affects the other, because you are so good on attendance. You could probably make that happen. That's a little bit more of an advanced type of game, but just be upfront with them all and say, hey, I've got too many to manage in one group. I want you all to play and have fun. Let's see if we can do it this way or that way and split in 2. And even if it's easier on you, run them back to back. So say, I don't know, noon to 5 is this group, 5 to 10 is that group on Saturdays, and you're good. I mean,
Wow, that's a long day. I haven't done
oh,
one of those.
but that's the way we do most of ours.
Oh, no, I'm just saying. I haven't personally done one of those in a long time. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
A suggestion, because we've done the thing where we actually, at one point, I had 12 players wanting to play games, and we split up into 2, and actually the fun thing was having crossovers, where once a month or once every other month, I would do all of them at once, and it was kind of interesting because I was running them in the same world, and it was interesting to have the crossover because everybody knew each other, and occasionally having guests when someone was out, they guest star in the game. So it actually leaves a lot more interesting storytelling because you can have guest stars if someone's going to be on vacation, or have an occasional crossover where it is tough to manage, a bunch of people, but they kind of interact and they know about each other.
If you're doing that type of a game, take special note of how your world sees your playing groups. Because you might have one random group that says, I'm going to set fire to this town over here. That should be something the other group will notice, especially if they're in that town. So that'd be a really cool thing to start to keep.
Are you comfortable running 2 simultaneous games? Like, because if you're not, it's the perfect time to ask somebody else to step up and say, listen, we've got enough people here, but I can't handle all this.
Someone waiting in the wings to run.
It's one of your guys' turn to take the reins here.
It's someone in the back first, and then we'll come on up.
Kind of goes along with that. I've been gaming with the same group of people for 15 years. And the gaming group has gotten rather large. If everybody shows up, there are going to be 12 people around the table. Normally we have 6 or 7, which is still a few too many. So we've talked about splitting the group up. The problem is that we have 3 kind of separate camps. We have the kind that actually are focused on the story, want to role play. We've got 3 people who just want to kill everything, and then we've got 1 person who's actively trying to win the role-playing game. Everybody's dealt with that one before.
Yeah.
The problem is that the one that tries to win the role-playing game doesn't want to play with the 3 people who have been killing everything because they've been playing together for 15 years. He wants to come with us. The 3 people that want to kill everything think that he's the problem and he should go and they can play with us. I'm obviously placing myself in the story camp because as the game master at this point, that's all I really care about. I'm not having any fun anymore. And we approached this situation before, and they take it as a social rejection entirely. Like, it's not like the game's becoming a bit unmanageable. You know, why don't you just play in a D&D game that runs every other Saturday instead? It's, well, if I'm not playing in this game, screw you.
Yeah, that's always the tough one, you know, where you're actually friendly, really friendly, and nobody likes rejection. So I think the gentleman in the Iron, is that an Iron Man shirt or something? I think, yes.
Yes. About a few years ago, I had the same problem where I was starting up a game, and all of a sudden I had 14 people that were interested, and I started running all of them.
Where are these?
And that was in about 4 blocks south of here.
You know, all these people who have membership issues.
Colleges have a ton of people.
I'm glad.
Well,
I wish I had that
so I
problem.
didn't have the option of splitting the group and running 2 because full-time student, you don't have time for that.
Oh.
And I had to basically cut my losses and say, you know, I had to learn to say no. And it was hard, but it's something that I had to learn how to do because it's not worth sacrificing all of that time and energy when you simply don't have it. So,
Which woman first?
I was going to address his original question, kind of touch on the rest of that. I would suggest trooping, something I learned from running a LARP for a very short amount of time. If you are short people, then you can just run with one part of the group. If everybody is in attendance, try doing a switch out like every other week. Have some of your people troop your monsters for you and cut your prep time down. And that gets everybody into the game, gives them a little bit of taste of one thing, a little bit of taste of the other. And it gives you the added opportunity of maybe helping to train another DM in the process. And that will keep everything cohesive and allow you to split without any real hard feelings.
Ma'am, in the back, you had one?
We have a similar problem. We could probably get 10 people to play if we could all agree on a time easily. What we do is we game every other week. We actually I'm in 3 games right now, one of which I GM. Every Sunday a game because every other week it's me, every other week it's Ryan, every other Saturday it's Jeff. And so what you could do is say, okay, look, can't do this, not every week. So if you can't do the, noon to 10 thing, then say I'm running this on every other one in. And for you, I suggest that you take the guy who wants to win
Thermite?
and force him to be the GM.
Yeah.
And make everybody else win against
Well,
him.
he does GM actually a fair bit, and what happens then is everybody winds up winning. Every village every town you go to, oh, the king has heard of you. He wants to see you right away. He has this trivial problem he wants you to take care of, and wants to give you all the treasure. So I'm about to start saying,
Instant gratification, all right.
Yeah. It's real challenging, real complex challenging.
One of the things that some of you guys, I know you're all kind of coming from different ways with this, but one of the things we talked about last year was sandboxing. And that's a potential where, you don't, either, and with kids it's kind of hard, but, hey, we've got 7 or 8 guys who want to run. Can you run us through? And maybe it's a different group this week versus next week. But you have a set world with predefined organic boundaries, and you're basically running them through. Whoever can make it can. It's a little bit more of a predefined world, I guess would be the way to put it, where you're front loading your prep, I guess is be the way to do it, instead of as it goes organically through.
Yeah, I'm playing one of those right now. Actually, we've got maybe 20 players in
Oh,
the
great.
world, but only about 8 ever show up at any given time. but that's by design. He intentionally recruits way more players than can actually show up. So whichever collection day player shows up on a Sunday, that's who the adventuring party is. And the only rule is that you go out into the world, and by the end of the actual game session, you have to be back in town, so there aren't any weird continuity problems like where you're like camping in the woods and the other party goes out and then do they walk over your sleeping bodies or something? That's really
Yeah. And thank you for explaining why the game master should never be late, because he forfeits all credibility whatsoever. Mark, you want to introduce yourself real quick? We're in the middle of talking about groups that are too big, because these people are like 10 times luckier than we ever were.
That's not really been a problem that I've had. I'm Mark. I'm from DiceMonkey.net and RPG Circus. And I've been DMing since I was like 14.
Right on. Right on. Yes, ma'am.
There's a great resource online for setting up a model for setting up the sandbox irregular session. The way, if you Google West Marches,
Yes.
there's like 4 posts and a lot of information, a lot of comments, and you can actually email the guy who wrote them, Ben Robbins, and talk about your particular situation. And
West Marches.
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah.
That's actually been the template a lot of us have used, I think, when we run sandbox games. Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, I have the opposite problem. Sometimes I don't have as many people as 20 or 10 or whatnot. And there's one guy that everybody's like, oh, we hate playing with this guy. He's always a jag-off. But we have 2 people. We need a 3rd person. So we're going to accept him. And it's always the same thing with him. He's like, oh, I'm the one-man wolf pack, you know. And he's like,
quick survey to interrupt. How many people have that exact same guy in their group, or have had that guy in their group? It's that guy. We talked about him last year. He's in all our games at once.
I'm the dual-wielding ranger. And like
Oh my God! I'm sorry to interrupt.
You just say that so
but you know, I don't know if anyone caught some of the contest. Someone was that character, and I was just thinking to myself, when will we let that character die?
Well,
I'm sorry.
We can just set fire to the Marriott lobby because there's about 15 of them back there. Right?
All the same people in Gen Con are in this room. Bar the doors.
A party of 4 people and him, like, everybody gets 15 minutes in an hour, like their little spotlight time. He's like, well, they all got 15 minutes each. I should get an hour. We're like, what? How do you deal with, like, you know, like he's a personal friend, nobody wants to boot him, but...
The best possible way to do that, I'm going to borrow a page from the gnomes on this one, is the idea of a social contract. Set it up, hold it to him, kick him in the nads if he keeps doing it, and that's pretty much about all there is to it. I mean, that's a technical term, by the way.
If you make an agreement, I mean, if you all sit at the table and say, this is how we're going to play the game, this is how we're going to interact with each other, and that person just isn't going to do it, you just can't have them at the table. I mean, there's a point where you just have, I mean, for the enjoyment of everybody else, for the group, there's a point where a player becomes so totally toxic that they have to go, no matter how bad the riff is to do it, like you just either, or just, you know, I've seen people just say they're going to quit playing and then like 3 weeks later reform the group without that guy.
We did that.
That's like
it's all priorities. I think it's all priorities, where you want versus friendship versus gaming versus all these. Sir, you had a comment?
I don't know. Some of you may consider this brutal, but you know, when I form a group, I form a group with people who have played together well. And if somebody else wants in, there is a discussion without them present, and then a secret ballot, and all you need is one black ball, and that person doesn't show.
We actually believe in our gaming group. Actually, after this last year, came back with a lot of notes on what we wanted to do, and one of the things is before we even formed a gaming group. Now, if you've been friends with the guy for that long, it doesn't really apply. You know, you really have to go back to your priorities and everything, but. We sat down in a Panera Bread and said, hey, look, we want a new gaming group, we want it local, this is what we want. We invited people who responded to, you know, we said, hey, you know, we used our local Barnes & Noble, we used some coffee shops, we used this, and this. Got a bunch, you know, got a fair amount of recruits, you know, and said, hey, we're just kind of talking about forming up a game, nothing concrete. And some people it really clicked on. It was kind of an informal interview. It wasn't like they had to wear a suit and tie or anything, or you know, practice rolling D20s in front of us, or you know, answer a 20-page question on Pathfinder rules. But it was very much like that about talking. And I think if you do that and set it up front, I mean, if you're already stuck with the gentleman, then that's where those difficult choices come into play. And I wish there was a magic bullet for it, but I just don't think there is.
We've tried everything. We sat down and explained, like, these are the issues. Do you understand? oh yeah, you guys are right, I do this. He'll behave for 1 or 2 sessions, and then it's back to the shenanigans.
You know, the sad but true fact is, you're, like Mark was saying, you're going to have to move them.
Yeah.
And it's hardcore, but you have to do it.
One of my friends, we just couldn't deal with him anymore, with doing the same type of stuff. And I just told him that because of work and stuff, we were too busy. And then we started doing
like
a couple weeks.
I don't want to lie to him about it. It was like,
Yeah.
Sure.
Well,
nobody else wants to play games with you.
I mean,
that if you don't want to lie to him, you're going to have to tell him you're out of the group.
All right.
Yeah.
We had one of the benefits.
I'm actually getting ready to do that with the player that just wants to win all the time. And even the, at first it's like, man, don't want to cut him out or anything like that, but really it's the more I think about it, the more Karthik it gets.
Sure.
And in the long run, you're probably going to be a lot happier. He's also my primary bat guy. So.
Well, just one thing I wanted to say is, having never done this, so I can't say for sure, but I would say as the GM, you probably would want to do this alone. Like you probably don't want anybody else there.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Sure.
You don't want to set up like the tribunal.
You don't have to be a total. Yeah, there doesn't have to be a star order.
The council
just rip off his D20 badge and screw his hat. That's not to be
Make
total.
him walk a path littered with D4s.
But we had a situation where we had a guy in our group that actually he had an issue where he had made a character and maxed out diplomacy or something, and then wanted to use the diplomacy rules to derail every session we had for weeks. And unfortunately, in our case, we didn't have that luxury of having it be a one-on-one with him discussion, because we thought, oh, it'll get better. And there was like a little bit of a blow up at the end of one of our sessions that turned into a really bad scene with that guy. And eventually, he was a friend of ours, a fairly good friend. And if you're good enough friends with people and you really have had a relationship with them that long, you can probably afford to be honest with them enough to say, hey, you're really causing a problem here. We want to be your friend. We don't want to hurt your feelings, but you're boning our whole group. So, please try and play with us a little bit more instead of being your own one-man gun. So,
I think the guy in the blue beard's been holding up, and then you guys are in.
Just a promising story. I actually had to have asked someone to leave one of my groups. The good news was that she knew there was a problem. There was friction going both ways, and it was not fun, and there were tears and some screaming and stuff like that. And that was the one-on-one thing. But it happened, and the group survived afterwards, and the play has gotten better, and everything. She's in another game. People move on, and sometimes, you have to do that, and it does make things better for everybody.
We had a unique situation where we had two groups of people that got together over work, and two groups of friends merged. And then at some point, we had two players that were just getting toxic to the whole group, that were dragging the whole thing down. One of the suggestions I had, this doesn't particularly apply to yours, but make the cut clean. I mean, just if you've got to uninvite somebody from the group, do it short, do it, make it you. Make it, I've decided I don't want you to be part of this group. You're just not fitting my game style at this time. And then remove them from it and don't talk to them about it. Don't talk gaming with them if you can. The cleaner the cut, the less pain there will be. Sure.
Sir, you had a comment?
I was just going to say, another perspective on this is if you allow that to continue, you're not doing that guy any favors. Because if he can't negotiate himself in those circumstances, he's having problems with other aspects of his life, or she, that they need to come to grips with. And they will be happier once they do that.
Our characters can level up, and so can we in some ways.
That's a good way to put it, man. That's like a Dr. Phil thing right there.
Everybody write that down and say how awesome it was.
I think it's one of the big things. I had to address a difficult issue with a player not too long ago, and it sucks as a GM. I mean, that's not my personality at all. But it's something that when you take on game, and I'm sorry, my voice is breaking. I've done way too many accents this weekend. None of them good, but it doesn't matter. you take on that responsibility, and you need to own up to it and figure out the best way. And I mean, you know, if you've been with a long running group or any kind of group, you need to respect the group as well, just not that person, because you're not ruining one guy's fun, you're ruining 4 or 5 guys' fun.
Or 20 in some cases.
Yeah.
You know, without breakers
Yeah,
joining
and
your
I
own
mean,
fun.
it's hard enough to find time to game anymore. I mean, it really is. As you get older and have kids and more kids, and then a minivan payment, and then another kid, and got to trade in the minivan. This is turning into an autobiography, but
we love you, man. It's all right.
I'm just so overwhelmed. Thanks, dude. Yeah, safe place. I have the talking stick. All right. But I mean, it's difficult, and you just have to own up to it. You got to grin your teeth, grin and bear it, and know that we all went through it, you know. And if we have to start a Google group for support, well, then we can do that. We just won't give the address to any of our players. So
That's it. We need to start getting Alan off.
Yes, sir.
Touching on that with yours, I find my time evaporating. How do you guys handle time management for games, particularly games with groups that run long campaigns? Because as the campaign runs long, I find to make that investment worthwhile, something's got to give.
Are you talking running or as a player yourself?
No, I'm running the game, but you start off with more time than you originally had, and then as you get into the game, the time tapers off. You feel like you're just the campaign is dwindling.
Well,
I actually slowed my campaign down as I got more and more busy and got kids. I went from gaming weekly to bi-weekly to tri-weekly, and what we did was we actually took 3 campaigns, and so we have 3 GMs, 3 separate campaigns. I mean, completely different games, almost the same group of people. There's a couple people swapped in and out, a couple core people, and so we just play every Sunday. It's a different GM's responsibility, a different GM's game, and it just, that extra week or 2 just gives me, you know, enough, I can squeeze enough time. You know, if I've got 2 weeks to prep, you know, I can get a couple hours here, a couple hours here after work. It's just, you know, filling in that time, and if you just need, you know, a bigger gap, you can do things by email to keep the game alive during those off weeks. And I think a lot of people are afraid when they switch from weekly to bi-weekly or something that
I don't
the
think
games
I've ever played. I don't think I ever play weekly anymore with anyone I play with.
My height, I was playing Amber like 2 times a week.
I've got about 3 points that can probably help you out, because I also have that same problem. There's a great method for laying out an adventure that I believe Dave the Game came up with from Critical Hits, called the 5x5 rule. I mentioned it last year. It's that awesome. I'm still using it. But you basically make 5 high-level outline points, and under each one of those, make 5 under that. And then I've never found a game so far where my group has covered more than 2 of those sub-points per game. So you just find the time to knock out an encounter or 2 or 3 for each one of those main points, and you got yourself a game in a pretty short amount of time. Also, get ready to start dropping in pre-made little modules or encounters if you can find them. I'm doing that at this, you know, in about an hour. I'm doing that for one of my groups that happens to be here. We're just using parts of the Tomb of Horrors book. It's brilliant, very Gygaxian and awesome, and it's very attunable to different campaign settings. The last thing I forgot, and I know some other people want some talking time, so I'll shut up. Yes, ma'am.
I got 2 things. First off, if you don't have another person to GM and you want to go bi-weekly, then set up a board game night or something just to keep everybody's schedule set. You still get together, you just don't game that particular campaign, because otherwise you will have people that it's, you know, a half hour past and they'll call you and say, was that game tonight? Yeah. Oh no, I have tickets to such and such tonight. I thought it was next week.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, which several people I've seen do, is guest GM. You say, okay, for the next 3 sessions, so-and-so is going to GM. And you talk to that person and you say, here's my world, don't break it, but otherwise go nuts. Yeah.
That's actually what my group did, is we would switch over and have one of my other players who would guest GM every once in a while, just to give me a break. And I'm a big proponent, if you can do it, of having GM PCs. I found they don't actually cause any kind of problem, so I usually run one.
As long as the GM yourself not that guy.
Exactly. As long as the GM isn't that guy, then I think it can actually work pretty well. And then when you have somebody guest running it, you aren't suddenly having a character show up out of nowhere. He's been with the group the entire time. If you're running a Star Wars game, he's really useful just to have as a pilot. He just stays on the ship, and everybody else goes off on adventures. And then he just adventures every once in a while. Yeah. You had a question, right?
Yeah, I was going to say one thing that I did. My life got really complicated about 3 years ago, and at the time I had a couple games going, and I was running True 20, and and the one thing that I did that really helped was I jettisoned the complex, difficult games. These days I'm basically playing Moldvay Cook purple blue box, just really basic bare bones races class, D20, roll a hit D&D. I mean, socially it's more complex, but the mechanics are so simple. A character, NPC stats about this long, and it takes very little overhead on my part to set up an adventure. If people suddenly decide to go off the tracks and do their own thing, I don't have to freak out about it because it's, coming up with NPCs is like that, and that has taken hours off of my prep time.
Once you get to know the system well enough, I don't know the last time I cracked open the monster manual. If you get the system figured out well enough, you can just make up NPCs purely on the fly. You just like, this guy's a little bit tougher, so I'm gonna give him 5 more hit points than I usually do, and just give him a +5 bonus.
I'm lazy. I reskin everything. I just take last month's monster and pull off the skin and put on a new one and give them 10 more hit points and send them in.
I've actually been experimenting a bit with combat as a skill challenge in some ways. They still get to use their abilities, but really it's a lot less of I have to have a step block for those guys, so it's often they roll to attack, they roll to use their ability, I do an opposed roll behind the scenes and add an arbitrary number based on how I'm feeling at that moment. And they hit, they don't, and then yes, that's unabashedly so. But it works out pretty well, especially if they do something crazy in the heat of the moment, like try and ransack a bar for no reason, which does happen in my game. That's the way battle goes. So I think the guy in the straight back.
Yes, sir. We actually have 5 players in our group, and what tends to happen is one person will run a campaign for like a month or 2, and then we'll switch to someone else. Either we'll run a different campaign in the same world or the same game system, or we'll be playing a completely different system. For example, we're playing Aberrant with one GM. We then went to a second GM. We're playing in a different environment, different setting, but still we have core rules. And a couple of weeks after I get back from Gen Con, we'll probably be playing Pathfinder with a completely different GM. And just rotate.
I have done, actually the campaign I'm running right now, I'm going to give away the plot. None of my players are here, so nobody tell them. The DMG2 has a really cool, some time travel sets of rules. And I have the same setting. I've been running for pretty much all my own homebrew campaigns, but in this setting, it's thousands of years after my last game, and the landscape's changed suitably, and they didn't even know until very recently that there was a history that some of them might have recognized, and now it's going to be, we have some people not show up or certain people that do. Actually, my game tonight's going to be occurring in the original timeline that will affect the future timeline, and you can kind of box it a little bit that way, so long as you make a clever way for them not to be able to go back and forth without too much difficulty. So,
yes, I think our buddy from Obsidian Portal back there has a question.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll sort of play devil's advocate here. Like, sometimes it's useful for me to just try and remember, like, if they don't see it, it doesn't matter. And so I mean, the fact that I don't have anything behind these doors, and that beyond the gray fog at the edge of the world, there is nothing. Like that, sometimes it's hard for me to swallow. But like, if I can just get beyond that and have enough for that night, I'm very jealous when I often read about other ones where it's like, oh, well, the GM dropped this hint in the first session, and then, that foreshadowing came up, 3 years later. Like, I never do that. And I mean, I'd love to, but I'm just not.
I think I'd be too exhausted.
Yeah. And so I just have to remember that, like, if they don't see it, I would love to run one of those games, but I never have. and at the end of it, I sort of feel ashamed, but everyone else seems to be having fun. So as long as they don't know that I feel ashamed and they have fun, like I guess it's okay.
Well, I ran that game where you drop the hit in the first year, and 3 years later it comes, 2 years later it comes back to bite them. I did that. My problem is now that I'm running a second campaign in the same world, and the expectation has been set for that first campaign with the same players.
I think it depends on your players, because sometimes if you try and do that, and you're like, okay, there's a golden idol in the corner. Okay, moving on, and then like 12 months later, you're like, it's the golden idol, guys, and they just look at you blankly. From the first session? Oh, you suck, And I think we expect that the players are going to take in the tiny little bits, and some are anal retentive enough to remember every single thing we've said, even when we forget what we've said. Unfortunately, but I think the thing is sometimes like I do the same thing. I feel bad, I feel bad, like I'm like, man, I did not have that prepped well at all. But it's those games where people walk away from, and I leave feeling like a scumbag, and then the next day it's like, oh, that was a great game. I'm like, well, it's always better in the retelling, you know what I mean? Those warts get ironed out, they really do. It takes care of itself.
This is embarrassment coming from a man who wore a Road Warrior costume to accept an Eddie last night.
Wait, which Road Warrior costume? Because that's like Lord Humongous or Mad Max or
generic Road Warrior mutant.
So you're worth the guy that bought
My Road Warrior knowledge is not good enough. I should be ashamed of that too.
Sorry, generic's probably the best way to go.
I derailed,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You were talking about the group not remembering details from past game sessions.
Yeah.
I lucked into when I was running the Traveler game, the girl on my right suddenly started taking notes, and her notes morphed into the ship's log. And since my handwriting is really crappy at times, I started audio taping my game sessions. So I was free to get up around a table and act out the NPCs more. I started looking like Nitro from Knights of the Dinner Table, standing up reffing half the time. But her notes, we would little photocopy them. I would transcribe them word perfect. We could read them off because our game session once every 2 weeks, and that became the ship's log in the game. Wow. So the first game session each time was like 15 minutes or less recap. Because somebody said, okay, what happened last time? All right, cool. Well, hey, thanks, Tina, for writing it down, and Ed for merging your notes with hers.
That's good to have an asset like that.
And I, as referee, knew, okay, she's got this right, this is the date happened. She started asking, she goes, okay, what's the fictional date we're starting at now? And it's like, okay. And it worked out. Sometimes she wasn't quite into it, but after a while, it's like, she wanted to be the ship's treasurer. So if you have one player that's the guy that's a fiendish note taker in college, if they don't mind doing it in game, it helps.
Related to taking a log of your games and recapping and stuff, I found a lot of times either recaps of the last session are way too short or way too long. What's a good way of managing how much information you need or don't need? Or
the way the TV shows do it. The high points that would fit in previously on da-da-da-da-da.
You make the players do it.
Yep.
You know what? I'm going to take the opposite. I'm going to take the opposite and say you don't make the players do it. I've done both, and I found that when the players do the recap, they get half of the important stuff down. They've missed the other half, and we spend twice as much time with me retelling them.
And they fixate on their character, their personal character.
So I actually, and I've done both, and I did years of having the players do the recaps, and we'd sit there and it'd be like, okay, and then what happened at the tavern? Oh yeah, that thing at the tavern. So I stopped doing it, and I started writing it myself, and then I got bored of writing them, so then I started making them into like little short stories, 4-paragraph, through the eyes of an NPC that was like somewhere near the scene, and it was just like a little creative exercise before I started writing the next session of the NPCs seeing the heroes go by and just thinking upon this is what they did or I saw this or whatever, and then move through. But I actually did stop making my players do recaps.
It's like a recap, beginning of an episode of a continuing show.
Well, we have our characters do I've done it in several different mediums, but I have them do an in-character, from their perspective, recap. And they do it offline. It's a journal. They get an extra 100 experience if they do it every week. If they don't, they don't. It has made the difference between leveling, which pisses people off, but it's wonderful. But they'll do it in the perspective of their character. We get together and say, okay, what happened last time? Those that have done it rattle it off real quick. Those that haven't, listen, and then I kind of give a little bit of filler, so it's kind of a little bit in the in-between between the two options, and to round out the details, and away we go. No longer than 5-10 minutes, absolutely max. for us. But
we used to do recaps at the end of the session, and what it was I pointed at the first player to my left and said, "Make your case," and they would basically go through everything that they had done during that session to help out the story and help out the group, and then I would assign experience points based on the more or less they contributed. And the players really liked that. If they got less, everybody saw why somebody got a little bit less, and then the next time they wanted to do more to get more. And then each person basically gave a recap of their own character, and because they were repeating, basically doing twice what they had done during the session by repeating it, they remembered it for the next session.
Like the young lady in the black has been up for a while.
I had a comment about foreshadowing and then another issue I was hoping to have discussed, but at a previous kind of event, what they said about foreshadowing is it's a lie. Sure, you remember the golden idol, but maybe back when it was just a golden idol to you, it didn't have any significance, but your players don't have to know that. You're like, yeah, now there's that one golden idol you saw way back when, and oh yeah, here's this little detail that really at the time meant absolutely nothing, and then your players are like, oh, you've been setting this up for years. No. You haven't. But you don't tell them that.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Like, if anybody survives a fight and runs away, like, you didn't intend that person to be like some recurring character, but now you've got, you know.
Yeah.
The 3 toast statue is always on the beach.
Use what you're given. Yes.
Yeah.
How do you guys make your game groups actually behave like game groups and not just like a bunch of dudes and girls who can come together and maybe drink some beers on a Thursday night?
You don't drink beer.
Because my groups will not. I think about doing some of these things like you're suggesting, Zach, like meet at a Panera, let's go over what we expect out of a game. They wouldn't do that. They would like laugh at me and be like, come on, just come over Friday.
You know what? That's a valid point.
Nor would they do game write-ups either.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a very valid point because a lot of times I think with GM advice, we try and write it like it's one of those old adventures that assumes that the adventurers are going to entreat with the pirates instead of just slaughter them and burn their village and salt the earth so nothing will grow there again. Because, the old adventures are always written, when the adventurers encounter the gatekeeper, he will ask them a riddle. It's like, no, my players will go up to the gatekeeper and behead him. It's the same way with game mastery advice. And I think we get discouraged sometimes because people online write these beautiful actual play recaps, and they're like, oh, my gaming group's so into it, and he did his own art, and he's awesome, and he emails me every night with these character concepts, and, we're BFFs, and, whatever. Whatever your fantasy wish fulfillment is, whatever. And that's a good point. You work with what you have. To overuse the phrase that ESPN loves, it is what it is. You've got your group, and how I diffused that a little bit in the past is to have some social time before the event. Let them get it out of their system, because if cheering for it. Thank you. Well, thank you. I'm glad they approve. If you give them, you're never going to totally wipe that out, because unless I think we all want to have good, those serious moments and everything, but you're going to have some Monty Python quotes.
They're fine players and they have fun games.
Great.
They won't do game recaps. There's no
Well,
interest there.
then that doesn't fit your group. Just don't have them.
I would love for them to,
it sounds great, and I'm in the same boat as you. I read this stuff online. I'm like, wow, I'd love to do that, or I'd love to run that game, but it's not going to happen. And I got to be happy with what I got.
My group's a group of friends who get together and have pizza and drink beer, and then happen to also be there for a game. Like once every.
They're social gamers. They're not
exactly.
hardcore. They may love gaming, but they're social.
And a lot of them, they don't see each other at all during the week. So this getting together once a week is a chance for them to get together and talk.
Quick follow-up on that too. I also have never given out variable levels of XP to my players because that would neither incentivize nor punish them. They would just be like, oh, so-and-so got 3 XP versus my 5.
Well, what's your players' motivation for showing up? Is it to drink beer and have a good time?
Yeah, pretty much. They like the story and the game and everything. But
yeah, you can curb it. You can do something like the first 30 minutes of your session is the BS session. It's gonna spill over. It's going to. It's not like now is the time for gaming. It's not. Don't try it.
You know what's funny? Actually, we have a group of coworkers at our game, and some of them we're in a kind of a bubble out where we're at for our jobs. And Stupid Ranger, my wife, Tasha, she actually will be the enforcer for work-related talk, table talk. She'll let us go for like 5 minutes. She goes, "No, shut up," and she'll cut us all off mid-sentence as we try and continue the thought.
That's been recorded.
Just to make it. Oh, I know.
Okay.
But she'll cut us off mid-sentence, so you can almost, if it's a big deal for you and you want to get in the game, elect an enforcer that everybody will respect and let them go. I mean, or let that person be the jerk of the group for a little while. So.
I've actually tried something sort of similar to that. It's a rule that I enforced on myself. Like, I brought some poker chips one time. I just had them with me, and I was derailing things a lot, and so I just took like 3 of them, and I was like, all right, this is the last. When I derail things, remind me, and I will give up on these chips. And then when I'm out, I can't derail things anymore. That's cool. And it actually worked really well.
That's a good idea.
Like,
That's neat. Did your player try to cash in the chips?
How much XP is this?
Sorry.
Actually, but it was. I mean, it worked really well because there were some times that and it made me think because I love to talk, and crack these jokes and stuff, but I'd have to think, well, this joke that I'm about to make, is it worth it? I only get 3 of them for this whole session, so is it really that funny? So
the Warhammer Fantasy 3rd Edition has a tension meter for your party, and it can either be used to actually track actual party tension, like if there's infighting and stuff, it goes up, and then everybody can suffer stress and fatigue and things like that. But you can also use it for too much table talk if the players agree that that's something that should be reined in a little bit, but they still want to talk, and everybody just slips up a little every once in a while, and you can steadily raise the tension meter, and the players are looking at that, and they can see the tension rising, and you don't want to hit that 5 mark where suddenly everybody ends up losing a bunch of points.
The gentleman in the ad.
If you like the idea of recap that much, you're running the story, cowboy up, take the reins, and be like, okay, last week we did this, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I end up doing it. Yeah.
Okay, well then, that was...
It would let me know that they're so into the setting of the game.
Ultimately, you can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. And if they don't want to, that's fine, but you can change the circumstances under which they want to do it.
That's true. I've resolved to kill PCs.
Well, no, but what I've done, I stole the rule from Deadlands. Deadlands, if your character, if their PC gives a little synopsis of last week, they tell their weird tales, they get an extra pull from the poker chip thing, so it's a reward-based system, but that has given my players incentive to do something that, whether it's in D&D or Shadowrun or whatever, they may not be a poker chip, but it's experience or some sort of material game within a game that they have an incentive to do it.
We're playing Savage World, so that'll actually work
right.
out.
So
they got bennies in there.
Right, just give them a penny.
Yeah. I'm willing to have him say his problem first.
It's not a problem, actually. When just talking about gaming logs and stuff like that, I had a really good Shadowrun DM who would ask his players to just kind of put a couple of blurbs together for a wiki that everybody had access to, and then he would go through and, just like in some of the Shadowrun books, where they've got blurb of information and then they have some poster commenting on that. Yeah, and he'd post as one of those characters in a couple of places, and it actually became kind of a synopsis for some of the plot hooks and some of the adventures. There was actually, we had a really awesome time because one of the things that was posted on there was a death threat against one of the characters, and that became real, tracking this guy down and ending him before he ended us. So, and the other thing, when it comes to engaging groups, my group does a lot of technology. Almost everybody has a laptop. I port blocked EVE Online in World of Warcraft, and my job became a hell of a lot easier.
Yes, first.
I have kind of a weird sort of situation, so I'll explain it first. For the last 4 years, I ran a 3rd edition game and have been in a still running 3rd edition game. And it's like the pristine, ideal quality. You're going through this long, epic campaign. Most of the sessions are almost completely role playing. Really great D&D experience, idyllic kind of thing. So I finished my campaign, and I start going to the RPGA for the 4th edition stuff. And